Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Ah, God. Oh, that's good. Oh, fantastic. I've stopped yelling at technology, so I'll send you guys the link now that I'm confident I have the right link. Okay, so okay, I've just sent out the link. Hopefully everyone will be pouring in soon. I've got my notification. There's a fly buzzing around here too. So the good thing about this new software is I can actually put a little webcam thing just down there, which, is that right? I'm not sure if that's working. Yeah, that's not going to work. So I'll just wait for everyone to pile in and I'll get this chat window popped out. Top chat again. I say live chat, but it doesn't seem to pay any attention. And another feature is to make sure this window is right. Hey Nathan, glad to see you've popped in. Let me just move that over. I'll have to move that up a little bit. How are you, Nathan? Excellent. It's the new software. YouTube made me install. So I've had it's been a bit strange. I've had a couple of dry runs, and 2 out of 3 of them worked, and then this one was a little bit temperamental, so I had to restart. And I'm glad. Is the mic working? Is this mic working well tonight? Hopefully it's feeling better than last week. Excellent. So I'm hoping some more people will turn up. I might just take this time to update the conference, the modules. Like, why do they kill Google Hangouts two weeks before these chats were finished? They just waited a little bit longer. And still us, Nathan, isn't it? Let's update the playlist. Okay, it's now on the playlist. Yay, Samuel. Yeah, I've just madly putting it in Canvas, and it's just been added to the playlist. You were probably listening to me say all that, weren't you, Samuel? Okay, that's not too bad. 7 minutes, a little bit over time. So this week, what I'm looking at is lecture 10. So hopefully you will have had a look at the lecture, had a look at PHP regular expressions. I'll just quickly run through that. We need quotes as well as the regular expression markers in PHP. PHP offers this cute little thing that the delimiters can be changed to make things easier. G'day Andre, glad you've joined us. And make sure you never do this, because that will take out the escape character. We've got preg match, so quite similar to JavaScript's regular expression match. There's also the replace one. And one nice thing about, I'm not sure if JavaScript allows you to do this. Great to see you found us, Alexander. When you wrap things in round brackets, they do get a reference. So they're kind of named $1, $2. So this one was found first, followed by this one, followed by the third one. So if you ever want to swap some dates over, so in America, they say, you know, August the 7th, whereas we say 7th of August. You can do a little swap and say swap the day with the month, and do the preg replace. One thing I hope you caught with this: don't use a regular expression to validate a date. Use something better instead. Check date. That will actually determine whether a date is legal or not. It's a nice Boolean value. So I would check the date, say, of a credit card, and then check to see whether it's expired or not. Then we went through maintaining state. I did update this just very recently. I noticed that I can't believe it. I noticed that this wasn't working, and so I updated it, and now it's not updated. Let me just refresh. Oh man, I can't believe it's broken. I fixed that like a little while ago, like this morning. That's still working, but that's not still working. That is a little bit annoying. But what I was hoping to show you there was that PHP actually stores a session ID cookie on your machine, and you can actually view your code right there. I'm going to hit shift refresh, maybe. No, it's definitely not working. So did everyone get this idea that in order for a server to keep a track of individuals, the best way is to actually store a cookie on their machine, and and then the request, every time a request comes in, it's like a sort of identity badge, and then the server can work out, it's that person who's got $10,000 in their account, or it's that person that's got $5 in their account. So if you can guess the session ID, which is very rare, it's very unlikely. It is like guessing a grain of rice, the correct grain of rice in a couple of years of rice harvests. Very unlikely, but of course not impossible. But we're relying on the fact that it's very unlikely. So maintaining state, I did want to impress that there's a bit of a trade-off between security and convenience. So even banks are allowing users to remember their client number, but I've yet to see a bank say, yes, you can remember my password too. But I have seen, I think, some of the mobile apps, they elect to replace your password with a PIN number, which is, getting a little bit close. And I don't know if everyone remembers Christopher Pine, but a while ago his Twitter account was posting some interesting material, and he claims that someone hacked his social media, but I think there's a very good chance he might have left his computer unlocked, and someone at work might have been very playful. That's my personal theory. So this is the important thing, the session array. So this is how computers store data on your machine, and it's another associative array, just like post or any associative array you want to create. And you can make it multi-dimensional, so you can just pop another branch. So if you've got a cart and you've got a product ID or a movie ID or a seat ID, you can pop that inside. You've got, if you like, you've got a cart, but inside the cart there's a product. So it's very much like real world situations, that you can put things in other things and keep them sort of organized. And that way you can just go through a particular item in the session and pop out a product ID and a quantity key. And just got an email from a student. Hopefully they're on their way. So when we're maintaining state, we can sort of remember a person when they're logged in, and I just want to demonstrate a quick secure area. So I've got the secure page here. Let me just pop that link into the chat. And if you log in, what's happening is that first name is being stored in the session. So there was a request, and I can now go to different pages as long as I'm inside. So you'll see that the browser is changing, and this is remembering that I've logged in, and when I want to log out, I just click log out and it will return to its normal state. So that's just a very simple application of this kind of setup, just remembering a user inside the session. And if you want to unset everything, all the user information, if you structure it correctly, you just have to remove the branch or the folder, and all the contents of that folder go inside the bin. So it just goes away. So I then talk about cookies. I say cookies are good for session IDs. So because cookies are sent to the server every time, you've got no choice. But it's safer and also better to use local storage and web storage if you're actually storing data on a client's machine. So I've got a couple of things. We'll go through this in the lab. One thing you can't do this because cookies are only ever a copy of what the client has received. Sorry, what the server has received from the client. So you can't actually do this. So in order to set a cookie, you actually have to run this set cookie command, and you have to set an expiry date. So this is like now plus 3,600 seconds, or That's an hour. Yes, I thought it was 60 hours, but it's just an hour. Not dividing very well in my head. So let's just flop over to the tute and explore that in more detail. So now this is very important. Any file that has you want to give access to the session, it needs to have a session start at the top of the page. So that's really just 2 pages. So you've got your index HTML and you've got your receipt.php. Sorry, I meant index.php and receipt.php. And then you've got access to the session. One thing to be aware of is when you're using sessions, you are asking the server to do a little bit more work. So just be aware, you know, if using the session, it means that you are putting an extra load on the server. Whereas, you know, when we push JavaScript onto the client's machine, the clients are doing a lot of this work. Now we don't cover databases in this course, and sometimes our assignments will have a login logout facility, so it just depends what we're playing around with each period. But in order to have a login, you just say session user first name or fname, and you can either load that from a database or accept it as user input. So how I've done the secure area, so if there's something called user in the session, then I'll say that they're logged in as this, or if they're not, I'll echo out that else, echo out login, click here to log in sort of thing. So I've got some sort of scenario, so I'll sort of, because there's a short delay, I'll just ask you to have a look at this and maybe answer the first one. So Bob is browsing to the home page on his session ID, and Alice is browsing to the products page, and she's got a different name badge or session ID. So given that they both logged in, assuming they're using their first name, of course, what is the value of this for each of them? And whilst you're answering that, I'll just load up the next question. Bob browses to a page with no session start command at the top of the page. What does he see? Andre's got it right. So Bob sees Bob, obviously, and Alice sees Alice. And I just want to make the point that Bob will never see Alice's data and Alice will never see Bob's data unless they swap session IDs, which is hopefully very unlikely. What about this one? Bob goes to a page and there's no session start at the command at the top of the page. Talking about tea, I'll load the next question up. Alice goes to make a cup of tea, it takes too long, and her session expires. What happens with her? There's a bit of a clue in the next one. I'll say there's a bit of a clue. Whoops. I'm going to do that. So that's the next question. So Andres, yep, you've got it right. What happens is you will see a blank, perhaps null if your error reporting is on a very high setting. You might get a warning or something that null is attempted to be printed to the screen. So this is a common problem. Again, it's just one of those, it's like double equal signs. it sort of gets us all. I'll often not being able to work out why something is not working, and sure enough it's because I forgot to put session start at the top of the page and they don't have access to the session. So very easy mistake to make. Make sure you grab that. So poor Alice, I'll sort of give you a heads up here. Her session expires and I'm wondering if everyone has had this experience. I'd be surprised if no one has not had this experience. So basically it's a bit like a bank. Most banks say, I think, about 10 minutes. I don't know if anyone's got any more strict login things. So one of my banks actually gives me a warning. It says, you're going to be logged out, and gives me a little countdown timer. I'm guessing that's JavaScript. I'm thinking the JavaScript is just running a countdown timer. And then obviously it's going to expire roughly around the time that the countdown timer runs out. So basically Alice will have to log back in again and she'll get a brand new session. It's very unlikely that she'll get the same session key because they are very, very long. Now this is important, and this relates to the Christopher Pine incident. Bob completes his order, turns his computer off, but he doesn't log out. So what can happen is the server is still waiting for another request to come through from Bob, so it actually will wait. And if anybody once had the experience of accidentally shutting down Canvas too soon, or maybe your internet banking, if you open that tab up really quickly, you can often get back in and the server doesn't know that you closed the tab. This is particularly dangerous if you're in an internet cafe, which is becoming less and less of a thing. Maybe in a remote part of the country or something it might be an issue. So if you're ever in an internet cafe or at a friend's house or something, make sure to actually log out. Don't just close the browser and think you're logged out. The server is actually waiting for another request. Now I've got a sort of Q&A here. So what I'm looking for is some advantages and disadvantages, maybe one of each, of storing it client side or server side. So I'll let you have a look through these options and feel free to start posting your answers. And to give you a bit of a clue, they do get more serious as they go down. Just out of interest, one query I've got, this encoding software allows me to set a portion of the screen, so the portion of the screen is actually the same size, I hope, as the video. So I'm just wondering whether the pixels are actually sharper today. If it is, that's going to be one big bonus. One thing I'm actually will be happy about if it happens. So someone keeps changing my use. I try and be consistent just so that nobody makes any typos in the exam or their final assignment. So not getting any answers. I might just go through say the color ones. So if color preferences are stored client side, that means it's not taking up room on the server, which is good. Oh, Nathan's good. You got the full range, so Nathan's just talked about this one and this one. So one of the advantages of the client side, it means it's not taking up room on the server. However, it means it's device dependent. So your color preferences on your phone and on your laptop and on your desktop are going to be different. So there's a bit of a disadvantage of storing color preferences client side. Server side means it's going to be uniform for all your devices. It might be a feature, you might want your color preferences different on your phone, but it could be tedious if you want a uniform look and feel. So a user's logged in status, this is a little bit of a trick question. It's actually stored on both sides, so it actually works as a sort of transaction. So every time the user submits a request, it so Andre, you've fallen into my trap. So the user's log contacts the server, they've got that identity badge, and then the server will actually refresh. There is actually a command to say to refresh the session ID, so that makes it even more difficult for hackers to penetrate, because the session ID can be refreshed on every time. So it's like a one-time use. But I will address what you said, Andre, because you've made a very good observation. If a client changes their session ID, the probability that they're going to guess a valid session ID is very, very low. Because the session ID is very large, there's many permutations. You've got to guess this very long digit number. It means a client is unlikely to guess another client's session ID. But I will say there's this DEF CON video. It's definitely out of its date. It's definitely out of date now. But this hacker basically made it a goal to actually guess someone's session ID, so he could get in on Facebook and do something. It's very amusing, but the title of the video, How I Stole Your Girlfriend, probably gives away the sort of topic of the conversation. But it's good. He does go through, it starts off being 1 in a billion to some reasonable number that you can actually get a computer to go through. Now something like this, so just continuing on from what Andre said, it's probably not a sensible idea to store the access privileges, whether someone is a customer or administrator client side, because you could just log into the inspector, say with Canvas, change your status from a student to a marker, and you could get your marks adjusted. So you could fix up all those pesky NNs and turn them into CRs and get a better passing average. So this one is definitely strictly server side. Now the next one, post and get requests. This is something that when memory was an issue, it was probably more serious. But when you're submitting a long form, so a form where you're completing multiple screens, so I'm thinking tax returns, or another option, the census, which happened a number of years ago. Users are filling in multiple pages, and rather than bugging the server on every page request, you could actually save the data temporarily on the server, on the client side, so that the form gets filled in, and then on the final page all of the data is submitted at once. So that's got its advantages. It means it's It means that all the data comes through at once, but there is a slight danger that you're storing sensitive information on the client's machine temporarily. So if they go away on holiday for 2 weeks, there's a possibility that someone could open up their computer and see all of their information that they've logged so far but haven't actually submitted. So I've got a feeling YouGov is doing maybe a little bit of a mix of two, but it's probably all server side. But if anyone's doing their tax right now, you can actually fill it in partially and it remembers some of your details, and you can go away and come back, and once everything's ready, then you can fill in that final page. So I've got a feeling the tax department, as I said, if anyone's at mygov.au at the moment, I think the tax department is saving everything server side. I haven't checked. I would hate to find it's being saved client side, but it is very convenient. So at the moment I don't have to re-enter my details every time I log in. The client's username, this is getting more and more common. The answer to this question keeps changing, and even banks now are offering to save your username. But as I said before, I have yet to see a bank fully offer an option to save the user's password. But if you think about Google, Facebook, all of those social media platforms, they are offering you to save your password. But I will say they don't actually save your username and password. What they usually do is they generate a sort of authentication token, like a one-off authentication token, and if you submit that, they will log you in. They'll just assume that you're allowed to log in. So even if your computer is stolen, they'll be able to log in one time, but they won't be able to get your username and password, hopefully, from that piece of information that's been stored client side. So even banks have given up the security aspect. They're definitely allowing some storage of information here. Now this is one tip. In JavaScript we were allowed to sort of like console log and also put in breakpoints and stop the program and see what value things were. This is one cheap and dirty way that I use to debug PHP. I'll actually create a debug element in session, and I'll just add things like if I'm on line 45, I'll pop in line 45 and say the value of x is this, and so when I'm running that program, it will hopefully tell me what x was on that line if I'm trying to sort of narrow in on a bug. It's very, very helpful. Next week we will have a look at some, let's say, more professional ways, but this is not a bad way. But you can also log errors to a file, so you can have your log file to one side and see those errors popping up. So activity 3 is reading from a tab delimited spreadsheet. And in the lectures, I'll switch back to the lectures now. So ideally, the database would be good, and hopefully changes will be afoot, but I do think that there is some benefit of knowing how to save data to a spreadsheet, because sometimes clients are more comfortable with a spreadsheet of orders rather than a database of orders. So that's just one tip. I've had 2 clients who've sort of been much happier with a spreadsheet than a database. So this is why we're doing the assignment writing to a spreadsheet rather than a database. But what we've got is we've just got a bit of an overlap of content that we're teaching this material in another course, but we are looking at revising that at the moment. So this is why in the very beginning I asked you to set that spreadsheet's permissions to 606 so that you can read and write to it. If you accidentally change that to 604, just change it to 606 and it should just be that bookings.txt file. So I went through basically storing data in general, so plain text HTML, JSON. So flat file usually stores to formats like this, but I'm a little bit suspicious that is 100% true because some of this is delimited text. So I also talk about you can either append data to a file. So the good thing about spreadsheets is you can append data to a file. You don't need to rewrite the JSON code inside. So when you're stepping through a file, it's a lot less harsh on the server and also the memory. You don't need to store the whole file in memory at a time. But stepping through a file does take a little bit more programming nous. And this is really why we use databases. So we get the benefit of both worlds. We send something to a database program. It basically inserts that into a file. Don't be confused. Databases are at some point just files on a file system. We just have clever tools that basically manage those files as best we can. So reading from file, quite simple. There's this is a very simple one. It gets the contents of the file straight from memory and splits them up into an array of lines. So that's really good for that application, but we will not be using this for the assignment. But this is how I got the show my code function to work, or print my code. I basically read the current file and then echo out all the lines as an ordered array. Writing to a file, so I'll just say PHP has got a system of having two files, two functions that do the same job. So there's the file get contents, or the file function. I think they just had two teams working on it. But the reverse one is file put contents, and that basically if you have an array of lines or you just have one giant string with line feeds in it, you can use file put contents and it will check and say, is this an array or is it just a giant string, and it will internally, so we don't need to worry about it, internally it will write that file by different means. And just let you know, pop in a little error here. Does this file exist? Does it have the correct permissions? Usually the errors are caused by these problems. Another issue with file writing, exclusive locks means that no one can read or write. So very, very important when writing. But sometimes if you're just reading, you might want to put just a read-only lock on the file, just if you need to read something, and make sure no one writes midstream, because there's nothing worse than reading and then having a file line changed. So that's the way to do that. And also if you want to append to a file, just pop in this flag and the whole thing can be done with one line, which is very handy. So these functions very good for quickly reading and writing to a file in one shot. But these functions are more the line by line, and the spreadsheet functions do read a file line by line or write a file line by line. So we will need fopen and fclose. So reading, if you open a file in read mode, that's quite sensible. If you're only reading, it stops you from accidentally writing to a file. W means writing but erasing all the previous contents. So if you're writing to the spreadsheet and only one line ever gets written, it's because you're not appending to the spreadsheet. It's a very common mistake to make. So in the assignment, please open a file in append mode, so anything you write just writes to the end of the file. Modes can be combined. If you're brave, do this, but I promise you it's probably better to open a file in one mode only. So I've just got a tip there saying not for faint-hearted people. So I talked about the lock, so you can have a shared lock, an exclusive lock, and also when you want to unlock a file, just pop an unlock in there. And I've got some examples of code, so shared lock and then unlocking and closing. Make sure the open and close are close together, or particularly the locks are as close together as possible so that no other processes trying to access the file are locked out for too long. So this is writing in erase the file mode, and this one is appending to the file. So again, these code examples are very good for non-spreadsheet files. So in general these are good, but we'll be looking at the spreadsheet files very soon. So handling delimited data, so I'm sort of like trying to build up to the idea of delimiters. So this is where we're using custom delimiters. I don't want you to use custom delimiters in the final assignment, but we can do it this way. This is quite useful if you need to put in delimited data into a cell. So if there's one cell that's going to contain a number of orders, or maybe a number of names or fields or something, that's probably a sensible idea. So PHP has got this very basic explode function, one of my favorite because it sounds so dramatic. So you provide a substring and it will go through the big string and look for these substrings, and it will break the string into an array of strings, which is then gives you an array of strings without the delimiter. But there is a setting, if you really want the delimiter, maybe it's commas, you can actually get those delimiters as part of the string. So this is basically turning each line into an array. So I'm appending to the records an array, another array, so this is going to be a 2D array. And when I've finished, I'll basically have a table of records. So this will basically be a 2D array that reflects each row and each column in this delimited file. So this is very close to a spreadsheet, but it's not perfect. Sorry, I forgot to tell you about the implode function that does the opposite. So this kind of glues arrays together. So if you've got an array of elements, it will actually glue the elements together in a big string. So that's a very good one. So sorry about that, I skipped over that slide, but this slide just points out that there are problems with delimited data because sometimes the strings you're using to act as delimited are present in the cells. So in a spreadsheet, sometimes we want a comma in a cell, and we need to have a system whereby an algorithm can recognize when a comma is inside a cell as literal text or when it's outside a cell as metadata. So there is an algorithm. So what they've done is, if ever a string needs quotes, it gets quotes. So if a string is between an odd number and an even number of quotes, it is seen as a literal character. And I'm just letting you know the magic behind the scenes. But if it follows an odd number of quotes, so I'll say that again. If an even number of quotes precede it, then it's obvious to the algorithm that it's outside the quotes, and that works really well. But then there's this other problem, that if you want a quote inside a cell, the quote character, that's going to throw the number off. So what they do is they cheat, and they actually put two quotes together, so it's still an even number or an odd number, and then another algorithm looks through for double quotes and turns them into a literal character, the single quote. So all of this is really, really complicated. If you want to use implode and explode to do this and you get this done, congratulations. But as you can imagine, this is complicated for your average developer. So PHP has actually got some spreadsheet handling functions. We're on motion detection lighting in this room. Whenever you're getting data from a spreadsheet, use fget.csv, and that will look after any quotes and commas. And put.csv, that will also look after any quotes and commas. And if we look at the secure area, hopefully you've all had a bit of a go on this. I'm using fput.csv, so whenever anyone, so Thomas here, Thomas decided to put both of his names in, so there's a space in his name. That's interesting. I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be. That doesn't need quotes, so quotes are optional. You can always have quotes, but the programmers obviously wrap that in quotes just so that it's totally clear that that's a string. But any name without, Nathan, thank you very much. I always like to give a call out to students who've had a go. So Nathan's put both his names in, so that's being quoted automatically by the fput.csv function, and we're using a tab delimiter. So I wonder if there's any commas. So luckily we won't have to worry about commas being an issue, but who knows, maybe commas are quoted. So your spreadsheet should look something like this, and to get you started I've got the source code here, so please feel free and have a look. And all I'm doing is I'm just using I'm opening the file in append mode, writing a single line, so like a single order, to the spreadsheet, and it will write that for you. Also, because it's tab delimited, you need to do something a little bit different, and I've sort of helped you out with the code there. So let's get back to here. And I've got a cute cartoon. I don't know if anyone follows XKCD, but there's a very famous cartoon about how a mother managed to erase a school's database. Totally fake, not an actual case, but it's a cute problem that does pop up. So that's the get CSV function, so that's the opposite where you're reading. So if anyone did want to actually put all their movie data in a spreadsheet and read it, that option is available, but don't do that until you've finished assignment 4, of course. So this is the put CSV. Don't use W. That will erase any previous content. Make sure you use the append array, like this one. So this one's good. So this one is oh, hang on, let me see. Sorry, I'll just talk through why this one is open in write mode. So this one, if you're writing a whole spreadsheet, you might want to put the headings on the first line, and then you say for each record write an entry underneath. So that's why I put that one there. And this example, I really should get rid of that line because that is confusing. So I might make a note to do that just down here. Lecture 11, move What slide's that on? 37. I might put a comment in, headings not needed, when appending to a spreadsheet. So I've got an example here. This is from previous periods where we had a I found a website. It was called Bob's Garage, and they restored fuel pumps from the 50s and 60s, I think. And I thought their website was really old. It was like classic HTML4, lots of GIFs or GIFs if you prefer GIFs. And so I set the task. We were going to restore their rusted out website and sort of provide that back to them. So what I did was I actually set reading the file as a task, and so I gave them this to help them out. And the issue with them was they actually had a row of this was a heading row, but they also had a heading column which they needed to factor in. So when they were reading each row, they needed to add a second dimension to the array by putting the product code in there. But I did give them the code to help them out. I will say I wasn't totally mean to them. So I gave them a script that helped them out. So if you open this up in just a plain code editor or just a text editor, then what you see is these little tab characters between each cell and a line feed character. It's not obvious, but there's a line feed character at the end of every line. And just here on lines 4, 5 and 6, this is where we get one of those meta characters. So because we've got a quote opening here, there's a line feed character. That's another meta character. Because there's a line feed character in here, it's recognized as being part of the same cell. So this line and this line are all part of the same cell. And the fput.csv and the fget.csv functions handle that. So this is why using file or file get contents wouldn't work, because you're actually breaking a cell on a line feed character. So some data is others. Yeah, I think that should be others. Oh, thanks for the heads up. I'll try and make sure I don't. Oh, what's the word for that? Aliasing? Is it anti-aliasing? I'm just watching it on the little video down there. It's even more intense because this screen's really small. So they try and make sure they don't do that in news things, but occasionally they forget. So I've just got a couple of questions there, and the example. So again, not needed for this assignment because we weren't reading, but if you are interested, it does. It's not bad. It's not bad looking at in time for the exam. I'll give you a clue about that. So I'll let you look through these questions, and if you have any questions when I have a little bit of a break, I'll definitely answer them. And because one thing I wanted to do tonight, because I've had a lot of questions about assignment 4, exactly how things work, and I really do want to cover that in the time remaining. So I've just got a couple of examples. Writing to a tab delimited, some of those Dorothy Dixer questions, so I'm going through each one of them. So, appending a bit of a clue there. In the exam, make sure you read carefully as well, so make sure it's very clear whether you're appending to a file or not. And also questions about what sort of lock you should use. just load up assignment 4 off screen so you guys can look at this a little longer. Got the single screen and the multiple screen. So I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit. So these arrows might be slightly confusing. Oh no, don't do that. That here. Oh no. Keep picking the wrong arrow. Okay. Oh Google, gotta love you. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to adjust the arrows and they keep bouncing off and going strange places. Oh, this is pixel perfect working out. Okay, that's a bit tidier. Okay, any questions? No, no one's got any questions. Let me just quickly, so I'm just updating one of the flow charts so it makes more sense. I'll adjust the other one in the same manner. Oh wow, that one was quick. It only glitched out on me once. So I'm just going to check the lab. One thing I was definitely pushing is when handling post data, even though post data can be modified, it's often a helpful idea to consider it a read-only variable. But I have had people sanitizing post and sort of changing the post data. So I'll sort of say that again. The post super global variable, I treat it as a read-only array, but you can actually modify the contents. So sometimes it's helpful to set up a field called clean email, just so you know that the clean email is clean and not raw post data. So then you can validate this variable, and it's a bit less typing than this, and if there's a problem then you can count the number of errors that have occurred, or say errors found equals true, and it should be count. I can't believe I made that mistake. Just change that. I try to be consistent, so you can either do errors found Boolean, or you can just count them. So that makes a lot more sense. So if something is clean, then we can then head off to the receipt page. But if it's not clean, we can stay on this page and go straight back to the form. so that the user will see any server-side errors that have been detected. So this relates to a couple of questions I've had this week. Exactly how does one page flow from one to the other? So just make a mental note of this box. This box is going to be in the blue section of the code that I'm going to present in the assignment. Oh yes, now if you're using a debug module, hopefully you're all using a debug module, but sometimes when you're adding things to the session it starts to get cluttered up with old data and you do want to clear it out because it hasn't been working. So this is something that's very helpful. If something comes through using the post method called clear session or reset, well maybe not reset, reset's a bit ambiguous, you can just basically unset various arrays inside the session. So all you need for that is just a button and its name is clear session. It doesn't matter what its value is, whatever's on the button, as long as it's set. So that means someone has clicked the reset button or the clear session button. Then when that refresh comes through, it will clear the session, and when the page loads, you'll get a sort of fresh page with no data in the session. So that's one little tip about just clearing the session when debugging. And then I've got another exercise which is just reading from a spreadsheet file. It's an optional assignment task because we're not actually requiring it for the assignment this semester, but it's good to know how to do. But this one is important, and I give you a bit of a clue. So it's a bit of a cut down version of the assignment, but hopefully if you can get something written to the file. And look, there's an example of a date stamp there. I think I was asked that question in the forums. So that's the date that Alice made that booking. So not the date that the movie is playing. So that's not needed. That's actually kind of hopefully contained over here. And I've even given you some starting code here. So if you set up an array of cells, so what am I doing here? Array merge, what am I doing there? Oh yeah, sorry, I just realized this. Sometimes you'll have a couple of arrays, so you might have a seats array, a customer array, and you just want to basically join them all together. So you can either push them together, so you can go through and push each element, but PHP's got this really nice function called array merge, and you can just get a number of arrays and just basically stick them all together. If you've got a variable that's outside an array, it's really super simple. Just create an array, so pop that single variable in array brackets, and it will be seen as being an array. If you don't want to do that, you can cast a simple variable as an array. So I wanted to show you a mix of different techniques. So you can cast a single variable as an array, and the array merge will handle simple variables as well. So I've given you a bit of a clue there on how to complete that portion of the assignment. So that's the end of the lab, and hopefully I've given you enough clues on how to do that final booking writing. So let's now switch over to the assignment. So what I've been doing is I've just been rewiring this red arrow so it's not mushed up with this red arrow. In other words, both these processes return the user to the index page. But I'll start with the simplest version first. So that code I asked you to just to keep a track of, it goes here, and the reason why I put it up here instead of down here, so this is the HTML, if you like. It's very important to put any sort of post-processing code right at the top of the file if you are going to make a decision about going to another page. So if you get a request, say for the index page, and as you're looking through the data you think actually this post data is ready for the index page, there's nothing wrong with it, you can then redirect. So if everything is okay, it's this zooming effect, if everything is okay, so do the checks. If everything's okay, add the post to the session. So this means that the data is available on any page as long as the session is started, and then redirect to the receipt page. This way the receipt page, it just has to look at the session data. So if it doesn't need to look at the post data, it just looks at what's in session. Has the previous page, so has the previous worker put something in the session? If not, then redirect the user back to the index page. That should only happen if someone's being naughty. Like, there should be no way to get there legally, but a hacker might try and get there. So there's no session data, go back to the index page. And there's a header function to look up in the notes. But if there is session data, then you can then create the receipt with the session data, because you know that the receipt page only put the post data in the session once it was all checked. So that's how this works, and then you echo out the receipt. But the question I was asked is, so I've had one question about how do you do the processing and then post some more variables to the page. Well, the trick is you don't actually need to, because if you stay on the same page and there's a problem with the post data, basically the PHP just runs through, skips, like this fails, so post is not added to the session, there isn't a redirect to the receipt page, and what happens is it goes in this else block, it sets error messages like the BMI both example, and it stays on this page, and it goes through and you echo out your HTML and you echo out the error messages which were normally blank. So this is how my BMI example works. It echoes out the error messages, but it's blank, so there are no error messages. And great, Robert, glad I'm helping you. And so you can click the checkout button, make some more mistakes, it comes through, still not, it's like an annoying service agent, nope, still not right, set error the messages, stay on the same page, and just go round and round in this loop, so this red loop, all the time until you get everything right, and only then are you bounced to the receipt page. And hopefully the only way you can get to the receipt page is if everything is okay, because there should be no other page that adds data to the session. So, and then you get this result. So I promise you this flow is the best, simplest way, but there is another approach, and I'll scroll down. Update. To get you started with adding data to the cart, try this code. So if you're adding data, so if you're only going to go for the add a single session to the cart, so you make a booking for a movie, you go straight to the receipt, you're going to see that single screening with all of your friends. So that's, if you like, that'll get you 13 marks out of 15. But if you're going for the multiple screening booking, you do need to do a slightly different approach. So this way, you've still got this looping effect, but you've got two buttons. So the add to cart always will loop. So So when you're adding, you need to, first of all, this is where you do the check. So if you click the checkout button, then you go to the receipt page. But if you click the add to cart button, you actually want to stay on the page. So you want to append data. You want to append the data to the session cart, the shopping cart. But you want to stay on the page if a add to cart was clicked. So you can do this the other way around. You can say if add to cart, then stay on the page, else redirect. But I've just done it this way, just to make it simpler. Now, if there's an error, so if there was an error with the add to cart or checkout, then it will execute this else branch, similar to the previous version, and set the errors and stay on the page. So if you get this process working, it's really just a modification in this branch, the all OK branch. You just need this extra code to either append or kick the user onto the receipt page. So just a little bit more work for the appending arrays, so appending orders to the array, the shopping cart. Just losing my place. But this process is very similar. Again, you'll only get to this receipt page if you're being redirected from the index page, and the only way the receipt page will render any data is if there's data in the session. So if there's no data in the session, it will seamlessly redirect to the index page. The user will get no notice. It will just go straight to the index page. But this only works if all the PHP is above the HTML. You must make sure all of this PHP processing is above and not mixed in with the HTML. So Cody's asked a question, and I saw hacker appear and went, yes. So what if a hacker adds data to the session? Now that's the thing, you've got to keep thinking, how can a hacker hack this data? So when a hacker adds to cart, the only way that they can get through is if your checks aren't watertight. So you might check the name and address and the mobile phone, but you might forget to check that the seat values are numeric, for example. So a hacker might try and do something with the seat data, maybe insert some SQL or some other things, and try and get in, because you might think, oh yeah, I've checked, it's in a select box. There's no way a hacker will be able to change the value of the options, but of course, I hope you all know now, you can actually change a select box to an input box and actually submit text in a drop-down field. That's not a problem. So the idea is this will stop any hackers from actually adding data to the session. A hacker can't actually put anything into the session unless there's a PHP script putting that data into the session. So unless they've got access to the server, in which case it's too late, there's no way that they can use these two pages in combination to put data in the spreadsheets. But Cody, I welcome. It's always a good idea to pretend you're a hacker and try your best to sort of break your code and see if you can get anything there. So Robert's asked, with checking seats, is numeric method enough? Yes, just remember you also need to check to see if it's a float. So you want to see that it's a positive number. So you don't want negative seats, because you'll end up, the client will have to give the customer some money back for ordering -5 seats. So make sure it's a positive float number when you're checking the seat numbers. of the seat quantities. Cool, glad that makes sense, Cody. Now, when you're only got one order, you can just assign. Now, this is not the final version, obviously. That's just swallowing the post raw. You don't want to have any raw chicken going into your session. So make sure you clean up the post and pop it into the cart only when it's fine. Or the other thing I said was, having variables. You can have clean variables if you want to save on typing. When appending data to a cart, and this is true of any array, just pop in these square brackets, and that means that will append an item to the cart. So you'll have cart item 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on how many sessions they want to see in that week. So this means that a group of people can see, say, 2 or 3 different screenings in any given week, and they might have different friends on each time. So this is the Rolls-Royce answer. This will get you 15 out of 15. Now, I just want to make this 100% clear. Some people are thinking we do see receipt pages looking like another web page. We do want it to look like a tax invoice, so something that is printed on A4 letterhead with the word tax invoice hopefully somewhere. There's plenty of examples online, so please go and have a look. What? Google, don't grammar that. Can I ignore the grammar? Doesn't look like it. Sorry about the blue squiggles there, that's annoying. How are we going for time? Okay, so what we're looking for, if you can put an ABN number, that would be cool. That's just a dummy number. And obviously there's going to be some styling marks, not many, but we are looking, if you make this page look really pretty, there is some styling marks, as well as making sure all the content is required on there. So maybe just the company logo, maybe a little bit of letterhead, a little bit of the header styling. But for the most part, we would like this page to be quite simple and to be a tax invoice rather than another web page. Now, some people make a small mistake. It's very easy to make. GST is 10%, but if you're if you know what the total is, working out what the GST component is, you have to divide by 11, because 1 plus 10 is 11. So if you have 11, you need to divide by 11 to work out what the 10th would be if you're adding to the price. So I think maybe everyone has gone to the shops and bought something for $10. So the GST component is not $1. It's not $9 plus $1. It's actually $9.09, and the GST component is 91 cents. So just watch out for that. I try not to mark you down on your maths, so I'll sort of say, I'll basically look at how good all your other stuff is, and maybe it's one of those borderline marks. If you've done other bad stuff, I'll pool all the mistakes together. But try and divide your prices by 11, not by 10, to get the GST component. And there's some more marks for making the tickets look really nice. So if you want to go for just the simple case, and I really need to clarify this because sometimes this goes wrong. Let me just go down. If you're just going for a single group ticket, so there's just one ticket that the customers hang on to. That's just one mark, but if you want the extra mark, if you print out individual tickets, so if there are 3 standard adults, you print out 3 tickets, and if there's 2 children, you print out 2 children, so a total of 5 tickets. So if you get that done, that's 2 marks for you. So design and quality of page and ticket layout is high, so I'm looking at all those things together, so that's worth 1 mark together. So this is, if you like, the basic style. It is styled differently. It fits on an A4, so it's competently styled. But if you've got some extra time and you want it to look really nice, there's another mark for this styling as well. Oh yes, I was on that page. So, are there any questions regarding this, and also, if you like, the more simpler flow? And I will say, in the past I did offer even more flowcharts. So you had the index page posting straight to the receipt page, and then the receipt page would post back to the index page, but they'd have to put the errors in the session, because this page can't receive any post if the receipt page is redirecting. Anyway, that was way too complicated, and so I've just done these simple flowcharts. I believe this is the simplest way. If you find another way that you're more comfortable with, just make sure it works. If it works, it'll be fine. But I am letting you know there are different ways of doing this, but this is the simplest way for beginners. Oh, has it snapped back to... This drives me crazy. Uh-oh. I swear that was... I set it to be live chat, and I'm sure I switched it to live chat before, but I'm so sorry about that. This Google really wants me to do top chat. I don't know why. Okay, so what? No wonder no one's posting anything. It's all been... Oh, I'm just going through all of these, making sure I didn't miss any. Oh no, oh, okay, it wasn't too bad. So thanks, Andre, for a GSC calculator. And now Cody is asking, is it okay to have a fancy looking page for screen view and a plain page for print? Yeah, yeah. Are you going to do a media query for print? If you do that, that's definitely good. So just to bring everyone up to speed with Cody, I actually have an example of this in the lecture notes. So I'm just going to flip to the lecture slides. So this is all very good, but if you want to print this, you're going to get all this, nonsense, these buttons that don't really belong, a footer. But when you press print, I actually have a separate style for printouts. So what I do is I hide the header and the navigation and the footer, obviously, and each slide is designed to fit on an A4 page. And I've got a feeling Chrome fixed, they had a bug that saw content flowing onto multiple pages. I'm just seeing if I've got an example of that. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so what would happen in the past, this was really annoying. This page, because it's too big for one page, it would actually flow into this page, and no amount of page break after stopped this from happening. But Google have since fixed this bug. So it would work in Firefox, but it wouldn't work in Chrome. We got a collision in Chrome. It's very annoying. Or maybe I just accidentally fixed my code one day. I think that, to be honest, that's probably what happened. But I like to blame Chrome for not doing their job properly. One thing I need to do, I actually have met a student who can't see the colors red or green. So if you remember that slider, I actually had it up 3/4 of the way before he actually saw anything. So I need to introduce another option that prints out basically monochrome slides. So I've got to turn all this red text. He just sees basically a blank space there. So I've got to like pick another media query now to get that done. Although we could choose that, I guess. So glad you're happy, Cody. So I'd be very proud of that. Let me just search for that. See, query. So what is that? The only slide I've got? Oh, I bet it's queries. Damn, English being plural. No. I think there's one in. Actually, I'll look for the word print. There we go. So these are all my style sheets. So I've tried to keep them separate. It's easier to debug when they're separate. Also, you can go in and see each style sheet individually. So if you're interested in the widgets, you can just see the widget CSS. You don't have to go through all the CSS to find it. And print CSS is where I have my media query styles. And you can see Cody, I don't know if you're already far ahead on this, so I've actually got this wasn't working always, even though it says always. So I've got a couple of styles you might want to look out. Can't work out. Oh yeah, I got stuck with the image. I had to kludge that to make that work. But these are the orientation, landscape and portrait, and I had to knock out a couple of things for non-print media. Interesting. Yeah, sometimes that got too big, sadly. So too big. So lecture 4, page 19, direct link to the style sheet. And cancel. Okay, so that's all the material I've got for you tonight. So I'll throw it back over to you for any last questions whilst I take a bit of a sip. I'm also trying to find my chewing gum, which I put down somewhere today. Can't find. I'm just looking at the levels on this, actually using OBS media encoder if anyone's interested. And even when it's quiet, the volume seems to be very loud. So I hope there's not a very loud hum in the background there. Now, one of the things I've got to remember is it's not enough to turn the streaming off in this software. I also have to go into YouTube and turn it off there as well. And I'm sure there's a setting that says when the stream stops, stop the recording. But I haven't quite found it yet. So the good thing is, which I've discovered, is I can actually then stream multiple times during the day, and it will just join it all into one big stream, which does sound attractive. So oh, I really should have written this down. I found out how to do this afterwards. I think I've just got to go back into YouTube and find it. Actually, if anyone knows how to do this, just let me know. Cody, you've created an admin login. Okay. Oh, that's not good. Okay, maybe not do that, because the thing is, we do have the protections on your directory. The HT access is protecting your directory from anyone other than staff members and yourself. So it's good that you've created an admin login, but if it's not working, just show the code normally. It's a shame that's crashing your server. One problem I will say, Cody, is the version of PHP on core teaching is quite old, so there is a chance that you might be using some more modern functions. When I say modern, you know, in the last 5 years they've been standard. That's my first the first thought that's come to my head. Oh, I think I found it. Okay, that's good. So no more questions, no more. Actually, could you go over that again? You did go very fast today. So reading, yeah, maybe do that after the assignment's done. This is the writing one. Yep, it's still on live chat, just double checking. Okay, you're all very quiet, so shall I close tonight by saying goodbye to everyone? And I'm glad this new piece of technology didn't break. That was my biggest concern. Okay, Andre's responding. Thank you, Andre. Okay, Alexander. And glad you're on the ball, Nathan. Was it Thomas who said Thomas said something. So, Alexander, you said the quality tonight was a big improvement. Are you talking about the sound and video, or me professionally? Because I did try the software a few years ago, and it just blew my upload speed, and so I just sort of ran away. Okay, well that's good to know. I know yesterday was a bit of a disaster. Sorry, last week. So I'm going to test this at home, I think, just to see if my poor 2 megabit bit upload can handle the stream. I've got to love my shirt. I can actually point to the comments. Oh, that one was good. And no, too dyslexic. Oh, lights are off. Oh, it's not too bad actually. Oh, I didn't realise I had soft focus lighting. I should have just kept very still. Okay, so I'll bid you all good night, and I'll move the mouse really slowly so I don't trigger the sensors. And I'll see you all next week for our final week. So we should try and make a bit of a party of it. Maybe we can all bring our own cakes and pretend we're all having cakes together, and lemonade and things. So good night all, signing off. See you all next week.